Okay, welcome back. How does inflation redistribute wealth? Well, first of all, we need to distinguish between anticipated inflation and unanticipated inflation. Because when inflation is anticipated, there is no redistribution effect. Let me show you with a little picture. Let's say that at the beginning of the year, I have 100 Rand and I can buy a basket of goods worth 100 Rand. I invest my 100 Rand, and at the end of 1 year, my investment is worth 103 Rand. In the meantime, the value of that basket of goods has gone from 103 Rand to 106 Rand, right? And inflation, therefore, was 6%. Although the value of my investment has gone up in nominal terms from 100 to 103, the value of that investment, or the value of my money, can no longer buy the same basket of goods as what it did at the beginning of the year. In other words, at the beginning of the year, I had 100 Rand, I could buy a basket for 100 Rand. At the end of the year, I have 103 Rand, and that same basket now costs 106 Rand, which means my money in real terms is now worth less. My investment has had a negative real return. Well, let's look at another example. What happens if I can earn 11% on my investment? Right? So my 100 Rand grows to 110 Rand. Again, inflation was 6%, therefore a basket of goods went from 100 Rand to 106 Rand. The value of my investment has increased. I can buy more than what I could at the beginning of the year. Now I have 110 Rand and a basket costs 106 Rand. Therefore, my investment is worth more than what it was at the beginning of the year. But by how much? And a rough back of envelope calculation again is that it is worth approximately 5% more. Those maths buffs out there will realize that this number is not exact. If you are not a maths buff and you don't know why it's not exact, don't worry about it. For now, nominal interest rate is approximately equal to the real interest rate plus the inflation rate. In other words, my real return is nominal return minus inflation. So I can buy approximately 5% more at the end of the year than what I could at the beginning of the year. Because my nominal interest rate was 11% and the value of the basket of goods has gone up by 6%, the difference between the two is my increase in real value. What happens, however, if I anticipate I make an investment, I anticipate inflation being 6%, and I'm happy to do this investment because I'm going to earn a real return of 5%, and I think that that's good value for money. I think that's a good return on my money. What happens then if instead of being 6%, inflation is in fact 7%? Well, then my real return will only be 4%, and I've essentially earned less than what I thought I was going to earn. Why is this a problem? Well, it has a negative impact if I am the person who's investing, because if I'm expecting a 5% return and I only get a 4% return, that means I'm getting less than what I expected to get, and perhaps I shouldn't have invested my money. I should rather have spent my money at the beginning of the year, right? Because maybe 4% is not enough return for me to have waited to spend that money, right? On the other side, the guy who borrows the money, right, who's borrowing and paying an 11% return, if he's paying 11% and inflation is only 7%, that means his real interest rate was 4%. If he expected inflation to be 6%, then he expected to pay 5% as a real interest rate. Instead, he's only paying 4%. Therefore, he wins. It's a positive impact for anyone who's borrowing. Anyone who's borrowing, anyone who's a debtor, or anyone who's earning a flexible income which is linked to inflation wins if there is unanticipated inflation higher than expected. Of course, they lose if there's unanticipated inflation which is lower than expected. And on the other side of that equation, fixed income receivers, or people who earn income that's linked to inflation, that's not linked to inflation, savers and creditors, when they lend money, if inflation is higher than expected, they lose. If inflation is lower than expected, they win. So you can see that what's ultimately happening is that wealth is being redistributed between borrowers and savers when we have unanticipated inflation. These guys are potentially earning more or less than what they thought they would, and these guys are paying more or less than what they thought they would. Let's leave it there. We've got one last video in this section, and then we move on to the demand side.